And so in our documentary, there's one of the ladies had a story where she wanted they were on a ADHD medication and it was white, so it didn't have dye, but he needed to go up to a 2 milligram
because he got bigger.
But the 2 milligram did have dye, and so they had to go back and forth with the pharmacist and the doctor to get 2 1 milligram pills for him to take.
Oh my gosh!
Versus just the 2 milligram, but they thought, well, they're trying to get more pills so they can, I don't know, sell them or whatever. But
and she's also a single mom, so she's having to pay like oftentimes for other prescriptions to pay like a compounding pharmacy. And so like there is obviously some cost there, especially with medication and candies. In other instances, you can buy the generic brand and it's cheaper. But with children that are like medically dependent on medications, oftentimes like you don't have a generic for that. So like you have to take that medication. And so one of the stories that really like shook me to my core and really gave me so much motivation and fire is a mom. She messaged me and she was like, my child is very reactive to dyes. Red 40, she has like an allergy, like an external allergy with hives and throat swelling and things like that. But she also has like a behavioral reaction, but she has epilepsy. And with epilepsy, anybody that's familiar with it, each time you have a seizure, it impacts your brain in a very negative way. So that's a big deal. Like you can't just not take epilepsy medication. And the epilepsy medication that's covered by her insurance has Red 3. And she can't pay to get it compounded because it's over $1,000 more. And she said, I can't do that without getting a second job. So I have to give my child a medication with Red 3. And Red 3 is particularly damning because we know in 1990, the FDA themselves found that it causes cancer in animals. So like,
oh my gosh.
I'll let Brandon actually, why don't you expand upon that?
If you have research, why would you keep using something? I don't understand.
Yeah. I can give you the Red 3
Brandon's
story.
good at Brandon's our Red 3 guru.
So I think it was around 1960 that the FDA put the dyes that we have now on like this temporary approval list. And companies could petition the FDA and request permanent approval. And so they did that with Red 3. The food and ingested drug industry did that in 1969, I think. And got permanent approval on Red 3. For whatever reason, cosmetics and externally applied drugs petitioned the same year, but the FDA required them to do more testing. And so, long story short, decades testing, get to 1990. There's a study. I'm not sure if the study happened in the 80s, and it did. Yeah. I think the study happened in the 80s. But come 1990, there was a study where they fed Red 3 to animals. They fed it to them, so they ingested it, and it caused tumors. And so the FDA banned Red 3 in cosmetics and externally applied drugs, but it was already permanently approved in food. So for 34... So
you can't put it on your skin, but you can eat it.
Yes.
Exactly.
So for 34 years, the FDA has been saying they're going to take steps to remove it from food, but they've drugged their feet on it. And so last year... It's
usually the reverse, by the way. It's usually like, okay, it's topical, but just don't eat it and keep it out of reach of kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so last year... California actually was the first state to go ahead and ban it on their own. So it is now banned in California. Companies have until 2027 to actually take it out of products. But I think there's like 10 other states right now that have similar bills like in the process.
And it's also important to point out that same year, CSBI, which is an organization we work closely with, CSBI is one of the organizations that have petitioned these states to ban Red 3. They've also petitioned the FDA to take it off, like nationwide, and they're just dragging their feet. Like they've made so much more headway in the States than nationwide. And a lot of people get frustrated. They're like, why just Red 3? Why not Red 40? But the reality is this regulatory stuff, it takes so long, and they have tried. Like they've tried twice to put a warning label on synthetic dyes, much like they do in Europe. And it's just like, it's very difficult. And we feel like a missing piece to the puzzle is awareness. I don't think that people know that they should care about this. I don't think people know that this is an issue. And so we're hoping that our film is an easy way to digest the science. We've interviewed world's leading researchers all over the US and in London. Very, very sound stuff. And our stories, complement those really well. And so we're hoping that this can set a level of virality and that people are talking about it, but also that people know like this is something I should care about. This is something I should be writing my politicians. This is something I should be writing my school board about. And so we're hoping with that, it can help obviously spur on some policy change.